All right, we're back, and I'm excited that you're here today. We got some cool things to talk about. Here are the topics, or a few of them, a few of the different things we're going to get at. What we'll look at, what will look like in the afterlife, big difference. The effect of hypocrisy on our spiritual appearance, and finally, what causes spiritual beauty. And the theme is kind of beauty this time, or yeah, beauty, attractiveness, that kind of thing. And I think it's really an interesting topic because beauty is a force that really shapes life a lot, doesn't it? I mean, doesn't it? Even if it shouldn't, it seems to drastically affect how people interact with each other, how we feel about ourselves. But it's kind of arbitrary. Like it's not like, oh, the nice people are beautiful. As the philosopher Kanye West said, the prettiest people do the ugliest things, right? So what is this beauty thing, and how does it shake up in the afterlife or in the spiritual world at the core of things? Because you kind of hear when we're in the world, we kind of say, oh yeah, well this person has like an inner beauty, okay, this is a beautiful person, even if physically they're not super beautiful. But what about, if you are in like a spiritual world and things are more at their core? How does that? Is there still inner beauty, outer beauty, whatever? Uh, I find it interesting. Let's take a look at what Swedenborg described based on his spiritual experiences, which brings us to Who Am I? Curtis Childs with the Swedenborg Foundation. The Swedenborg Foundation is a nonprofit group that does things like this. It tries to have conversations about the ideas in Swedenborg's books with the hope that it will improve lives and improve the conversation around spiritual kind of topics. And really, spiritual topics are human topics, and just the kind of the discussion around what's going on for each of us on a deeper level. We're going through his book right now, which is called Our Life After Death, and it's a free download. You can download it at this link. It's a short link here, so you can type it into your browser. You can click it if you're watching this in post. We'll make that an active link. But for right now, just go to the description of the video, open it up. This link will be in there as well, and you can click that, download the free PDF or ebook. We'll be working from the PDF today. So hopefully you guys can grab that. And before we get in, though, we got to get our mindset right. It's the way Swedenborg describes it: heaven and hell. The positive and the negative are always influencing our mind, and we can actually tune in to one or the other. So let's do a little tuning our antenna the right way right now, which means pushing out what he called hell, which you could really sum up as superiority, to feel like your needs trump the needs of others, or that you get joy out of being greater than or using other people. The more we can push that out, the more we make room for heaven. And heaven is found in humility, in hey, we don't know everything, we're not better than other people, we're all in this journey together. And then usefulness, or information we gather, things we get here, it's all for a cause. How can we take this and use this to brighten someone else's day? And that if we're looking at that actually opens up the mind to the light of heaven as he describes it, and that will help us understand the material better. So hopefully we got a good situation in the brain to have some brain food, and so let's get into that right now. So the PDF, we're starting on page 24. We're right in the middle of a chapter where we pick up, this is the second paragraph of page 24. When we first enter the world of spirits, which happens shortly after the reawakening just described, and if you want to hear about that reawakening, check out earlier episodes of this show, our face and the sound of our voice are the same as they were in the world, meaning in this life where we are now. This is because at that point we are in a state of being in which we are focused on our outer self, and our inner self has not yet been revealed to us. So there's kind of this process that he says when we die, initially things aren't that different from how they are here, but we go through this, the process is different for everyone, but a set of experiences that kind of get us to the core of who we are, if that makes sense, to kind of strip away externals. I don't know if you guys could hear that, but we have a thunderstorm going on outside, so those aren't like ominous sound effects. Like that's the real deal. That's some nature out there. Hopefully we'll keep power in the building here. Okay, I was in the middle of something interesting. We go through this process, Swedenborg says, in the life after death, where we go from external, sort of the superficial part of us, to really getting down to who are we? What do we value? What would we do if we thought no one was looking, for better or for worse? And that's this process he's describing here. So he says that this is our initial state after we have died. Later, though, our faces change and become quite different, or our face changes and becomes quite different. It comes to look like the ruling love that the deeper reaches of our mind focused on in the world, the kind of love characteristic of the spirit within our body, because the face of our spirit is very different from the face of our body. And he talks here about ruling love, and that the face in this world, your face is an image of your genetic code. You know, there's some expressions that can come from your personality that change it, but really the basics of it are determined by your DNA. And he's saying that there, your face becomes an image of your ruling love. And so ruling love, he says that we all love a lot of different things, but there's sort of one thing that is what drives us and kind of gathers everything else in us to support that. He often talks about this ruling love. And in the next life, you actually become an image of that love. It's a much more honest world there, so it can't be, oh, I met this charming fellow and it turns out he's a maniac. You know, like you look like what you are there. And so there's this, and he says that, you know, for some people the ruling love is themselves, you know, or a love of power, or a love of money, or a love of decadence or something. On the flip side, it can be a love of helping other people. It can be a love of, you know, whatever kind of goodness floats your boat, and that is sort of the essence of who we are, and that we kind of are kind of making that choice while we're here, and then in the next life it shows up in the face. We get our physical face from our parents, meaning, through the genetics, and our spiritual face from our ruling love, of which our face forms an image. Our spirit takes on this face after our physical life is over, when the outer coverings have been removed. And so the face takes on the image of a certain kind of love. And the idea that the face can be an icon for something, can be an icon for a certain kind of love or a way of being or a thing, we kind of buy into that already. You know, we'll have a lot of ads that show a face next to something to try to elicit a certain emotion. And there he's saying that things really are as they seem, because, you know, obviously here you can have a you know, nice looking face, and actually, you know, those studies that say people will assign qualities to good-looking people that aren't really there. Like the good-looking people, we tend to just generally think, oh, they're more honest, they're more altruistic, they have more integrity, when they don't. I mean, there's no correlation. So, but in the afterlife there is that connection makes sense, because beauty only shows up externally if there's beauty on the inside. And so that's one of the major differences in sort of the human experience there. If you're just joining us, we're talking about beauty and what makes spiritual beauty, and what do we look like in the afterlife. And this is all based on what Swedenborg said. And is it the same as here, where you know people can be beautiful on the outside regardless of how they are on the inside? What dictates what? I want to remind everyone that this is a discussion. Hopefully you guys can be commenting to each other in the YouTube thread below this video. Also on Facebook, you can go back and comment there. And any questions or comments that are, you know, pertinent to what we're talking about, we try to put them up on the screen at various points so that we can hear what you guys have to say, because it doesn't need to be all me, because obviously I'm going to get some things wrong, maybe everything wrong. All right, so let's get back to the text here. And this is him describing some people he saw in the next life when his eyes were open to that. I've seen some newcomers from the world and have recognized them by their faces and voices. But when I saw them later, I did not recognize them. So this is people going through that transformation of getting down to who they really are, and they take on a whole new appearance and a new tone of voice. People whose ruling love was good had beautiful faces, while people whose ruling love was evil had ugly ones. If our spirit is seen for what it really is, it is identical to our love. and our face is just the outward shape of our love. So that's interesting to think about the face as the shape of love, and that on the other side you can have somebody that is a certain way, loves certain things, and the way they look, their face is the perfect picture or the mirror of that. It just is a little bit of how things are much more what they seem on the other side, or that's what he's getting at. All right, let's take a look a little farther down. We're making our way into page 25. If you're just tuning in, this is the PDF Our Life After Death. Look in the description for a link. The reason our faces change is that in the other life, no one is allowed to pretend to love something they really don't. So we can't put on a face that is the opposite of the love that guides us. And I just want to stop and say that's one of the primary differences that Swedenborg came across when he was having these experiences and visions of the afterlife, is that you can't be two-faced. You can't have one intention and another appearance, and that this is what does all this sort of sorting into the heaven and hell, because you can tell. I mean, what are somebody's intentions? You see those there's like those crime shows or where they like follow a serial killer or something, and you see the person in court, and you're just like, it looks like a normal person. Like, really, this person did that? Well, if somebody really was harboring that kind of will inside them, that they would be able to do those kind of horrific things, they would look like a somebody or something that could do that. And that makes it, that actually, if you think about it, adds a lot of safety to the world, doesn't it? Because doesn't a lot of pain come here from not knowing who we're dealing with? Like, we don't really know who we're talking to. We can guess based on sort of what we intuit about them, or how they've treated us in the past, or what they say, or now you'd Google them and see what pops up. But there you really know. And as an aside, even people that have ugly intent and therefore ugly faces don't walk around seeing each other as ugly all the time. They're made to not always have to see that. They get to look normal until someone's investigating them, just so they can have as decent a life as possible. It's not about making people feel bad or punishing people. It's just about keeping everybody safe and happy and well informed. Okay, so let's get back to the PDF. All of us are shifted to a state of being in which we say what we think and show what we want to do in our expressions and actions. So there's that saying, no filter. Like, you have no filter there. I know I'm stopping every sentence here, but I hope we'll keep a good clip. The point of life, one of the points of life, as Swedenborg describes it, is that we are this world. We do have this ability to say one thing and think another, and that's good, because it gives us a chance to get ourselves into a place where we wouldn't mind if we said everything we thought. I don't know about you, but even right now, if I just started to say everything I think on camera, that would be the end of it, right? I mean, all kinds of things pop through our minds that we don't even like or aren't even into, but they're there, and all the time, you can get upset by something and want to lash out, and that it is that if we didn't have this external that we can kind of control and manipulate better, we'd just be doing that and everything would be out of control. But the path in life is to work on ourselves and work to overcome those shortcomings so that we can get to who we really are and what we really think. We're fine with that being out there, and that process can continue a bit in the afterlife, but a lot of the heavy lifting we kind of do here. Okay, this is why our faces take on the shape of what we love and form an image of it. And this is why all the people who have known each other in the other world still recognize each other in the world of spirits, but not in heaven or hell. And I guess that here, and if to see what he means by heaven and what he means by hell and what he means by world of spirits, I would check out the first show that we did. He has pretty different meanings than a lot of people. I guess no one has meanings for world of spirits, but heaven and hell, it's worth noting the nuances of his differences. But what he's saying here is that by the time you've sorted yourself out and chosen which of these you feel like it should be your home, you're so who you are that you're a new person. You are your inner self instead of your outer self, like we are here. So that said, I want to hear what you guys are thinking about all this. Does that make sense? Does it feel ethical? Am I explaining things correctly? Feel free to leave your questions, your comments, and add to the discussion. Let's see what people are saying right now. We have from YouTube, M. Christina says, "Thank you so much for this wonderful series. You're very welcome. In your previous video, you discussed the form of spirits. Did Swedenborg discuss the relationship between this and what we refer to as orbs?" If you've never heard of orbs before, and I may not even understand the full phenomenon of it, but it seems to be they show up in photographs. And I learned about this after starting to work with the Swedenborg Foundation. But people will, take a photo where there's not a light source, and they'll see like, oh, there's a ball of light there, or at some meaningful place for them, or during some meaningful time, there pops up this ball of light, and people are calling them orbs. And I've met people who talk about them, and I've seen pictures. And so the question is this the form of our spirit that Swedenborg talks about? Does he give any kind of link to orbs? I wouldn't say that I've heard of anything. I mean, obviously photography was not around when he was writing in the 1700s. However, and whatever mechanics, if there is a spiritual phenomenon there, the mechanics of that happening are way beyond what I would know to understand. But I would say that Swedenborg does talk about the concept of what many people would call an aura or a sphere. He calls it actually a sphere that proceeds from people, like something about your inner characteristics goes out around you, and you can any of us can kind of feel that. Somebody can sit next to you and you just feel relaxed, or you get the willies or whatever, and he calls it a sphere. Does that mean it's literally a sphere, and is that the kind of thing you're talking about with orbs? I don't know. So I'm just honestly going to say I don't know what the connection is. However, I like that question a lot. Thank you very much for it. All right, let's get to our next one. This is from YouTube. Rob Bubar. Does our spirit develop, and does it go through changes the same as we do while living in the physical world? Excellent question, and yes, that the changes that our spirit goes through is the point of the physical world, according to Swedenborg, meaning that you could almost say that the physical world is the womb for the spiritual world. That as I was just talking about earlier in this show, we have this sort of outer self and inner self, and we're able to correct ourselves and kind of do a little bit about choosing what kind of thoughts and impulses we act on, and just do what we would call personal growth or character development, trying to become a cooler, nicer, more fun to hang out with person. And that the person we are is our spirit, our character, our personality. That's a spiritual thing, and we take that with us to the other side. So every day we're doing this spiritual growth, hopefully in a positive direction. So yeah, the spirit is making changes all the time, and that's actually the best investment we can be making, is to invest in that spirit and that growing, because as it's cliche, you don't take wealth with you. You don't even really take reputation or anything like that with you, as Swedenborg would say, because as he was describing before, there's this, you don't even always look the same. You don't it's not like if you have 20,000 Twitter followers, you're going to have those, and you may be a whole different situation. But the character, what we did with the situations we had, that stays. So anyway, great question, and let's get to one more here before we move on. This is from Facebook, from Sarah. My question is this: do the spirits live in houses, and who provided these? Also, if we have a storm, do they experience it too? Okay, so two-part question. Good, interesting about the storm, because we're having a storm tonight, and I would say this about that. According to Swedenborg, the physical world and the spiritual world are intimately linked. But not like one-to-one. It's not like if it's raining in the spiritual world in the part that's next to here, it'll rain here, but that things turn into their correspondences, as he calls it. So there are things that can be happening in the spiritual world that affect the physical world, and I don't know what, obviously I don't know what that would be in terms of weather and all that, but there must be some parallel phenomenon that's going on. So they're experiencing something there while we experience something here. And then as the first part of the question, what was the first part of the question? it was, oh, houses. Thank you. Our crew here has reminded me of it. Do they have houses? Yeah, man. Swedenborg's quote Swedenborg, or probably to paraphrase, angels have houses that are so glorious that they can never be described. And actually, he says that houses there actually reflect your inner characteristics, just like faces, like we were talking about before, and that the houses change according to the states of your mind. It's really pretty cool stuff. And who provided those? That's a good question. He'll say, like, in heaven that they're housed. Uh, he says gratis, but without having to pay rent, basically. And he says it's from God, but he says everything is from God. Whether there are actually people that build those houses for them or are working on them, I don't know. It could be, because you do find people who love to build things, and you'd think that would transfer there. That heaven is kind of based on the joy of serving other people in different ways. So you'd think that if there's people who love to build, that they would, architects who really love homes, you'd think that they'd be plugged into to making those houses. But all he says is that you get them, and you don't got to pay rent. You work. Everyone likes to work there because you're doing the job that you love, but it's not to make however much money a month to pay your heating and your water bill and all that. So excellent questions. Really like it. Let's get back to the text. If you're just joining us, this is Swedenborg's Our Life After Death, which is a look into his spiritual experiences. So now, okay, we said we're going to talk about hypocrites, and I want to pause for a second here and say, you remember in the beginning when we did that exercise about getting hell out of the mind and heaven into the mind? When he's talking about something like hypocrites here, I always like to, you don't want to get into the habit of, oh yeah, those people that are hypocrites and I'm so cool here, I'm not like that. That's actually, he says, that's a hellish tendency to judge other people morally, and that it's more heavenly to forgive and put a good interpretation on. So whenever he's talking about something like that, I like to think of hypocritical parts of me. We all have tendencies, or at times have been. So I don't like to just categorize it, oh, these people. But he will talk, in terms of, oh, these kind of people do this. But I just wanted to put that on your radar, that way of looking at it. The faces of hypocrites change more slowly than those of other people, because by constant practice they have formed the habit of arranging their inner selves into a counterfeit of a love for what is good. And I want to pause again to say, that he's very much about the kind of people we are here, the kind of life that we cultivate. It sticks around. It's not shed with the body. So if you made a habit of was pretending that you are here because you really care about your grandma, when really you're trying to get her to put you into her will, that sticks with you. So that's what he's saying here. So for a long time they look fairly attractive, and that this even affects their appearance there. So for a long time they look fairly attractive. However, since this false front is gradually stripped off and the deeper elements of the mind are gradually arranged in the shape of what they love, they wind up uglier than other people. Because as we said before, the face becomes an image of the love, and if a love of deception, that's an ugly love, man. You think about the pain that deception causes. So if that's what's driving you, a fair interpretation of what that looks like is not pretty, right? And that's the difference in the spiritual world that he describes. Is it how things really are? I don't know. I can't control that. We're just taking a look at what he reported. You guys take it, put it into your brains, swish it around, and see if you dig it. Hypocrites, and this is where he's going to define things. He often will have definitions of things that are a little different than what we hear when we first hear the word, or think when we first hear the word. Hypocrites are people who talk like angels, but who inwardly respect only material things, not the divine being, and who therefore deny the reality of anything having to do with the church and heaven. I would like to point out here, when he says the church and heaven, always take what he says lightly, because he has more complex meanings for words. So you might think, oh, hypocrites are people who don't go to church on Sunday and don't read the Bible or sacred texts or something, but that he would say that the church is an internal state in all of us, and it's a state of love, and that to reject the things of heaven in the church is to reject kindness and to reject compassion and the deeper sort of qualities. It's not just organized religion that he's talking about. So this is somebody this kind of hypocritical state that he's talking about is somebody who externally acts really nice, but they don't care. They don't care at all. They just want what's theirs. And don't forget to be getting your questions, your comments in there. Just write them in the YouTube thread there. Appreciate everyone who has been commenting. Some of you may know more about this than I do. Some of you may have had experiences with this kind of thing. What have you seen? Has anybody had a spiritual experience? I love hearing about this because obviously it's fascinating, this idea of where we might all end up and what are the dynamics. And it's sort of the answers to life, and that's kind of what we're looking at here. Where does this beauty thing lead in the end? What's the final thing with it? Is it always sort of arbitrary like it is here, and we have to navigate? Okay, you're beautiful on the outside. Are you beautiful on the inside, or does it change? And those are some of the questions we're taking a look at. So we're going back to the PDF. You can find it in the description if you're just joining us. Follow along, page 25, last paragraph. One thing we should be sure about is that our human form will be all that much more beautiful. Okay, so this is beauty tips for the spirit, all right? Our human form will be all that much more beautiful after death if we have deeply loved divine truths and have lived by them, since our deeper levels are opened and shaped according to both our love of these truths and the way we live. And what are divine truths? Well, it can be your call. I would assume the things the golden rule, like sort of the things that are present in all these traditions how could that not be a divine truth? And you find these in your study, and really the living by, he said, is essential. The more that if we hear something that sounds nice and really integrate it, that has this really healthy effect on the spirit, because it's bringing us, as we're talking about, into this state where the internal and the external are the same, and they're both beautiful. So if you want to be beautiful, do that. But really, the way to be beautiful is to want other people's happiness, not to want your own beauty. So that's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it? All right, going back to the PDF. So the deeper our love and the more it is like heaven, the more beautiful our faces will be. And he's saying heaven here, and he often equates heaven with a state of mind, which he describes it in different ways, but one is wishing better for others than for ourselves, or another way that it can be put is wishing to give what is yours to other people. And this could include your and happiness as you have. That he says at one point that no one in heaven is truly happy unless they're sharing happiness with someone else. This is why the angels who are in the very deepest heaven are the most beautiful, because they are forms of heavenly love. And the deepest heaven, as he's talking about, he says there are 3 levels in the mind, and that we can be opening those levels as we're on this planet, and that's the deeper you go into heaven, is the more you've opened yourself up to this inflow of love. And so the deeper you get in there, the more you look like this kind of pure divine love. And so obviously that's gonna be the essence of loveliness or beauty. And so that's how that appears there. So that's what he's talking about when he says the very deepest heaven, because he'll just throw these kind of things out there that have these whole concepts behind them. And it's why the more you know of Swedenborg, the more you understand every sentence. So that's what we're trying to do here, is build up a little cache of information. On the other hand, there are people who have loved divine truths more with their outer selves, and for that reason have lived by them in more superficial ways, and they are less beautiful. This is because only the more superficial qualities shine from their faces, and no deeper heavenly love can shine through those superficial qualities. And if that love doesn't shine through, then neither does the shape of what heaven really is. And there's kind of this quest that he's always talking about, of coming more and more into the form of heaven. And that he's coming back to here that really taking, he talks about truths, your higher principles, the things that you know are the right things to do. And the more that we grab those and really put them into practice, the more they take root, the more that they grow. And I'm not trying to be like, you should be doing that. We should, life is long. We have the time to do it, but it's just cool to kind of realize that it matters. Because sometimes you can be hanging out, you're going through life, things are miserable, life is a grind, it's a drag, and you can kind of feel like these steps I try to take towards living more aware or more well or more kindly or more humanely or more compassionately or more in a more engaged way. What does it matter? But it can be kind of cool to think about that this is building something. This is affecting the spirit, even if it seems like, I'm trying to talk to these people and introduce something good and I keep getting shut down, or hey, I'm trying to stop getting mad at my dog and I can never stop. That these efforts, even if it doesn't seem apparent, they are making a difference on the internal level, and that he says everything multiplies in the next life. So all these little efforts we put in, that the parable of the mustard seed, like this little effort that you put in can get huge. So I find that encouraging, and that since life is such a marathon, it's good to have little things along the way to kind of motivate, these sort of heavenly carrots, if you will, on heavenly sticks. Okay. In their faces you can see something that is dim by comparison with heaven, something that can't come to life because no deeper life inside is lighting it up. So this is, that if you are just kind of paying lip service to things, that the real love in life can't come through like it could before. To put it briefly, the deeper anything is, the closer it is to being perfect. And the more superficial it is, the farther it is from being perfect. And our beauty varies depending on how close to perfection we are. And that could seem like a pretty heavy statement or a pretty high standard, but really, he's just saying that nobody ever gets there. Nobody's ever perfect, perfect morally, perfect person or whatever. That's not the goal. The goal is just to be making effort in that direction. And he says that angels, which are people who have gone to the next life and have been pursuing this path of love, they continue to be perfected to eternity. So obviously there's no, okay, you made it, you're totally perfect. That we can keep getting better and better. Growth doesn't stop on earth. He has this cool passage where he says every stage of life in the next life, because you can sort of think things are kind of static. Okay, in heaven is like, all right, so I'm on my cloud and I'm playing my harp, and so I learned all the harp songs, and now I'm just sitting here, but he's saying that we can, it's dynamic, and we continue to grow and change and learn. And he says that every stage there is just like an egg compared to the stage that's to come, like the difference between an egg and like a living flying bird, like what the potential, and that even that next stage is just an egg to the one that's to come. So life can continue to be getting cooler and cooler, and that this transition from the physical world to the spiritual world that he's talking about is not the only big transition that we'll ever go through, that you can keep going higher and higher in the spiritual world. All right, so again, that's plenty of me. Let's hear what you guys have to say. We got some comments and questions here. This is from Facebook. It's from Susan. Will I have excellent eyesight? I'm slowly losing my eyesight, and it's devastating me. I'm nearly 66 years of age. So first of all, I want to say that I'm sorry that is tough. Eyesight, and because we're such a visual society, and to navigate around, it's such a hard thing to deal with. But also it's just hard to lose anything that's yours, especially connected to the body and the life that we have. So sorry that you're going through that. And I could certainly say that according to Swedenborg, yes, your eyesight will be awesome in the next life, and that all the maladies and all the issues that we have here in the body, disease and all that, that stuff dies with the body. The spirit is not worried about those kinds of things. When I was young, I was convinced that I was going to be in the NBA. No, wait. This is going somewhere. Okay, the NBA is the National Basketball Association. I was convinced that I was going to be a player in there. And one thing I did was, I'm talking about very young, and one thing I did was go to like this basketball camp, where they teach you how to dribble better, and probably at that age how to just get it close to the hoop. But there was this guy who ran the camp named Garth, and he liked to tell this story about a guy he knew who had an accident, and he was in a wheelchair, and I'm not, and so somehow the guy died, but he had left this comment where, or he had written this note where he said, "When I get to heaven, I'm going to run for 3 days." And that makes me get a little tingles, and just this idea of this reconciliation, and that people who having lost things get things back. And obviously the biggest one is the people we love getting to see them again, and to see them and to have such a greater appreciation now that we know what life is like without them. And then, but also just things like sight and like walking, that we're going to get it back. And that it's obviously the coolest idea that exists. So yeah, things are going to get better for sight. Sorry that you're dealing with that, and thanks for writing, Susan. Okay, and I think we have one more. This is from Connor on YouTube. It seems to me that for the first time in history, there are more blind faith atheists than blind faith Christians. Would you agree with this? Man, one thing that I've noticed, pardon my stretch, is that there's a lot of clash of ideas. So I work with the Swedenborg Foundation, and we do stuff on the internet surrounding spiritual kind of religion kind of stuff. So that's a recipe for fireworks. And you see a lot of people clashing about everything, and you kind of have like sort of these factions. You have like people who are like card-carrying atheists and card-carrying Christian sort of fundamentalists, and people who are all these different spectrums in between in different organized religions, and they don't always get along, or they don't ever get along. Well, sometimes they get along a little bit, but what I've noticed is there does seem to be, in all categories, two types of people. There are generally two types of people. There are people who are convinced and are there to win arguments, and there are people who are open-minded and are there to talk and to learn, or something along those lines. Even if someone's not there like, oh, I'm going to change my convictions, they're looking for good in what other people are saying. They're looking, okay, this is how I want to put it, looking for common ground. How there are people who want war, and there are people who are looking for common ground. So I would say that's the difference between sort of fundamentalism and what's the opposite of fundamentalism? Defundamentalism, chilling out, something like that. And I think that I've seen that in all camps. I've seen that, yeah, certainly. I've seen people who don't believe in any religion, who are very much have these certain principles they reference and repeat them, and I've seen people in religion who do the same thing, and it doesn't matter what you say to them, they want to have a fight. As far as the ratio, man, I have no idea. All I can say is I think that there is a potential on both sides for the conversation to get less bitter, because I think there are fringes. There are religious fringes, and there are atheistic fringes, and all other where people are fanatical, and that is inflaming either side. I think a lot of people would agree with that, and that the more we make room to not have those instigate. It's kind of like in politics. You know how they say like the picture on TV is kind of that, and I'm talking about U.S. politics right now. If you're in a different country, we're based out of the U.S., and it's the one I know U.S. dysfunction the best of any dysfunction, but I'm sure every country's got it. That you sort of the picture you get on TV is that the country is really divided. There's the extreme right and there's the extreme left, really conservative, really liberal, and that's kind of where. But when you actually go to surveys and learn what the country is like, it's much more down the middle. And I think that the discussion around spirituality and what's the ultimate reality of life is much more down the middle than we realize. But the fringe comes out in the comments, a lot of the time. So, but the more that we can remove ammunition from them by finding common ground, introducing good ideas into the conversation, the better that will get. So there's a long answer to that question. All right, we have another question. Okay, we're gonna go to this. So this is Unchevalier777 off YouTube. Doesn't the environment around you eventually in the next life also reveal some of your inner qualities? Also, don't angels see evil spirits differently than they see themselves? This is somebody who has read some Swedenborg and certainly absorbed it. Yes, man, totally. Or man or woman. Well, I guess even if you say man to everyone, don't you? Like, yeah, thanks, man. I'd never say thanks, woman. So whichever one you are, thank you so much. And yes, Swedenborg said, we've been talking about things representing other things this whole time, right? We've been talking about faces representing inner qualities. We talked briefly about houses representing the qualities of the mind. And that Swedenborg says, yes, that in the spiritual world, and you think of our spirits are the force that kind of designs the spiritual world, that even the external, what kind of plants are around, what kind of animals are around, is determined by what kind of people are living there. So he says that angels can actually get this. Not everyone understands that, but angels can actually look around and see what's blooming today, what's going on, and understand things about themselves and about other people that they're around. And then, yes, do angels see evil spirits differently than evil spirits see themselves? And those are a couple of terms. Swedenborg says everyone in the afterlife was once a person, like you and I. But the cooler you get, the nicer you get, the more you become angelic. And if you are self-centered and think it's funny to trip people and stuff, then you would be called an evil spirit because you get more and more evil. And that angels actually, and I think I touched on this briefly at another point, where angels will actually can see the true nature of the evil spirits. But evil spirits, when they're seeing each other, they don't see the hideousness inside each other, because you can't really have a good life when everybody looks like a demon around you, and so that even for people who are insisting on choosing a life of evil, God is making it so that they can have the happiest life they can in the circumstances. So they kind of have this bubble of illusion, which is to make it so that life is good, but angels can look through it and understand what's going on, so as to protect people and move things and kind of pull some strings. So those are awesome questions, and we'll have one more question answer session at the end. So if you guys want yours talked about, answered poorly, like I answered those ones poorly, get them up on YouTube or on Facebook, and we'll get to it. Okay, let's get back to our PDF. I've seen angels of the third heaven so beautiful. And third heaven, I am repeating myself, but 3 levels of the mind. If you have them all opened, you're in what he calls the third heaven. You open levels of the mind by learning, higher truths, or living lovingly based on what you know. That's how you get there. So beautiful that no painters, with all their skill and pigment, could render a fraction of their light, or rival a thousandth part of the radiance and the vitality that show in their faces. By contrast, the faces of angels and of the outermost heaven could just possibly be captured in a painting. So, he didn't have photography then, but so he's saying that there are levels that, when we only have opened the first level, it's like we just would be like really, really awesome people here. But the deeper you go, it's like, wow, the potential is amazing for what the human being can be, and it sounds like an exciting place to go. All right, so what we've been going through here, I hope, to me it has pretty much made sense. And I hope it has made sense to you, but we're just going to go off the deep end here in the end. He's just going to just sideswipe us with this really down the rabbit hole kind of idea. It may not seem that way to you, but it seems that way to me. So this is just fair warning that you might want to strap in for this one. All right, so getting back to the PDF. Finally, I should like to offer a secret never before made known. Everything good and true that comes from the Lord and makes up heaven is in the form of a human being. This is true not only of the totality of heaven on a grand scale, but also of each individual part of heaven on the smallest scale. This heavenly form has an effect on everyone who takes in what is good and what is true from the Lord. The more those in heaven take in these things, the more truly human in form they are. This is why heaven is self-consistent throughout, both in what is shared by all and in its individual parts. It is also why the human form is the form of the whole heaven, and of each community and of each angel. And it should be added, this is why the human form is the form taken even by the individual thoughts born from the heavenly love found among angels. The secret may not make sense to anyone on earth, check, but it makes perfect sense to angels because they stand in heaven's light. So he's just basically saying, listen, man, I know this is wild, but I need to put it there. Angels would get what I'm talking about. And so he's saying that everything, like a hologram or the microcosm and the macrocosm, that you look at anything in heaven and it has the human form. And we've talked about the human form before, and that it's not as simple as, okay, heaven is shaped like a person, like this. No, it's talking about the function that the human, what we are, is a gathering of interdependent, interconnected systems that all work together, like the function of sight and of taste and of detox by the liver, wherever the liver is. That all those working together is how heaven works together, and that each community in heaven also has that form. And you can, so you know how we say the outer world can kind of reflect inner realities, so you can even be looking at a community if you have enough insight and see them as a person, and by what that person looks like, you know what kind of community it is. And even further down, the rabbit hole that is, he says that individual thoughts have the human form. And I could stand here and talk like I know what that means, like, oh yeah, but I don't, not fully. And he's saying that that's something that it's hard to grasp, and maybe you guys feel like you grasp it. For me, it's tough, but I also think that makes sense, because there are things things that in books that I've read about, even things that are relatively well understood, like time and space being relative, and if you're going fast enough, you slow down time. Not to mention all this new quantum mechanics kind of stuff. Those are hard to wrap your head around. So wouldn't the stuff in the life to come be just as complex and just as hard to wrap your head around? So that's how he ends it, and it's cool that he just had that on his chest. Like, man, I gotta write this at the end, because he needed to give you all the information, and it's up to us to piece through and work in there and try to understand it all, come up with the answers. So let's take a look at our last questions and comments here. The first one is from YouTube, from Melissa, and she says, when my son was killed and I was at the hospital, he had died on scene. My question is, was he there in spirit, seeing me cry by his hospital bedside, and did he understand what was happening? So Melissa, thanks for being willing to put that out there, because obviously that's one of the most intense moments that you can go through in life, to lose a child like that, to lose anyone you love. But to be willing to share that with us, I feel like those kind of things connect us and make us human, to kind of see the things that we've gone through and that other people have gone through. So I just want to honor that, because that really does something, even for me and for the other people watching this now, to see that and just hear about your struggle. So thank you for that, first of all. And I would say, if you read most near-death experiences, people who have these terrible kind of accidents and return to the body, they almost unanimously will say, I was there, I was in the OR, I could see what the doctor was doing, and then people actually come back and tell the doctor, you were putting sticky notes right here, weren't you? And the doctor, wow. Google it. I mean, look it up on YouTube. There's a lot of accounts like that. So, and they seem very aware enough to even people describe looking at their own bodies and oh, there's that. This is the real me. But they very much see the people in the room and what's going on. So I would say absolutely, yeah, your son saw you. I mean, he must have seen you, and would understand. And I would say still understands what's going on for you. All the pain that comes afterwards, and all the nuances of grief and the loneliness and that kind of thing. I would imagine that he still does. But anyone who's looked into spiritual experiences or had a near-death kind of experience, will say that, yeah, I mean, they see what's going on. So I would imagine that he was. And again, sorry that was something you had to go through. And thanks for being willing to make that a part of our show today. So let's move on to the next one. This is from Christopher. Can you describe hell for me, please? Okay, I'll do it. Again, you could say like, who's this guy on YouTube who's going to tell me what hell is like? What authority does he have? I'm just telling you what Swedenborg has described in detail, and take it. Does it sound like it is could be? Obviously you don't have to take this as the truth automatically. That's not what we're trying to do. Briefly describe hell. Okay, here we go. See how I do. Hell, like heaven, is a state of mind. The state of mind, one time Swedenborg describes it as to feel the joy of evil as something good. That is hell. So hell is a state of mind where your joy in life, what you enjoy, is hurting people or putting yourself above people, taking things from people. And you see this, I always reference these, but shows about people who really enjoy killing people. These A&E kind of detective shows, or people who love the rush of stealing things or hurting people or conning people. That the joy in that's the state of mind that is hell, and that brings all kinds of problems, because if you go into the you can be in hell here from that. You can ruin your life, obviously ruin other people's lives, get locked in prison. And prison is a pretty good analog for hell, because it's a place where you lose freedom and you can't get access to innocent victims. And that's a lot of what he describes hell as being like. That so if you bring that state of mind to the other life, in the other life we naturally gravitate towards people who are like us. So you go towards people who are like you, and if you are someone who enjoys hurting people, that obviously is not going to be a fun neighborhood to move into. Hell, the way that Swedenborg describes in the other life, it's a lot like here, the kind of prison type, judicial type thing where you're not tormented or tortured for past crimes. There are rules, and if you break them, you get punished. You can't try to hurt people, can't try to kill people, and if you can't control yourself, you have loss of freedom, you have punishments, all this stuff. And it's basically about taking people who have this burning sort of zeal, or I mean not zeal, but desire to harm people and hatred and all this, and how can you keep them from harming themselves and others as much as possible and keep them from getting worse. And so there are corrective measures there, and get them to some way contribute to the whole. You have people, and I'm not saying that here there can be people in prison who are innocent. Just like we're talking about with this whole thing, that the face and the spirit, we don't know what's really outside and inside. But there, nobody's innocent in hell. That's something that you go to based on what's in the core of you. So, but like in prison here, you have like, okay, you guys can we can go pick up trash or break rocks in the old days or whatever. If those movies are to be believed, that hell is trying to get you to contribute in some way, some honest way to society. Descriptions of it, I mean, as somebody mentioned before, there are different ways of seeing it. There people can look nice and fine, but when you look at them in heaven's light, you see their intentions. Swedenborg has all these descriptions of how terrifying the face of evil is. So if you see somebody who has the intent to hurt, what they really look like on the inside, that can be grotesque. He describes, and obviously hell is like heaven. The whole world is, it's like kind of like saying what is something like on earth. There's all kinds of different things that he describes, going to places that are just like sort of broken down huts. There are like burned looking buildings. He describes lakes, with swamps, with all kinds of nasty stuff, cities that are filthy, and that actually, but the people there like filth, that if you like evil, you tend, this is just like opening up all these other points of discussion, but someone asked me to describe hell, I'm trying to describe it, that you're attracted to that kind of stuff. So it's basically, a gathering of people who want to live really dysfunctional lives. And there's plenty more. If you go to download Swedenborg's Heaven and Hell, you'll get all the description you could possibly hope for. This book we're working through is more about the world of spirits, but there's plenty more. You can download Heaven and Hell for free on Swedenborg.com. So hopefully that's a good little summary. Okay, we have another question that we're going to be going to here. This is from Rafi or Rafe. If I mispronounce your name, anybody, I'm very sorry. From YouTube, the end game seems to be that eventually all creation will be redeemed. Is this true? Are there opportunities to become more like the higher angels in time? Will those in hell ever want more than hell? I think so. Yeah, good, great question. Um, let's see. Certainly, as far as angels go, yeah, we can progress. I mean, they say the angels progress. What you do here really can fast track you. The more you open up here, the easier it is to go forward there. Um, but yeah, and then will people in hell ever want to be out of hell? Swedenborg makes a couple different. I mean, there's one point where he's saying if they didn't go through this process, they just have to stay in some hell forever. And there are other times when he says, our nature doesn't change. If you want hell and you can't be let out, then you just stay there and you don't come out. So take it as you will. It seems like, though, there would have to be a chance, because Swedenborg is always talking about, he'll talk about punishments and things like that in hell, and that he says none of them happen unless there's some kind of good that's coming out, some kind of corrective thing, getting people to give up certain desires for evil, that this is the only way, he'll often say this is the only way that kind of evil life can be removed. So why would that be happening unless there was some kind of end game, right? And it does certainly say that the end of creation, or the goal of creation, is heaven from the human race. So if that's God's goal, I mean, what wouldn't he want to design some kind of way that everybody would see the light at some point and be able to give it up? But he doesn't talk about that, maybe he doesn't, because that would make us just like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, getting our stuff together. But I don't know, man. It's a great question, and in the heart, I would say there's got to be a way everyone can get back on the good side. But I'm also not going to say that Swedenborg says, oh yeah, everybody makes it. So there we go. There's a couple of different sides for things. We have one more. Let's take a look at it. Oh, good. I'll definitely mispronounce this name. Leda or Lita. YouTube. I've seen my family members in my dreams, and they look like I remember them. What is so cool about this is before I go to sleep, I ask my mom to help me with something very important, and she helped me. So that's just a cool little anecdote there. And I do like to, one thing I like is there's this whole spectrum of what you would call spiritual experiences, from like near-death experiences where everything is very overt, and down to like this dream was more than a dream. So I really appreciate hearing it all, and it's cool to kind of feel a response, because often we feel so disconnected from things. So it's cool for you that you asked and then got an answer. So I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, thanks everybody for the questions. If you're watching this after the fact, you can leave questions on here, and we'll try to either get to them next show or we'll answer them, give a typed out response there. To close, we've been doing a lot of cognitive stuff and learning and talking about ideas, but let's get a little more into the emotional side of things. I want to do a segment here that's called Correspondences. We do it every week, and this is Swedenborg's idea that, as I was talking about before with the storms and what's going on with the physical and spiritual worlds, that he says the physical world has imagery in it that's portraying spiritual realities. And that if we can learn to read that imagery, we can gain insight about these spiritual things that we can't see through the physical things that we can see. And today we want to talk about God as the Son. And linking God and the Son is something that's almost universal. That very often that imagery is used. And Swedenborg says that while the physical sun, the star of our solar system, isn't God, it's telling us something about God, because in the way that God brings love and wisdom to human minds, the sun brings light and heat. So if we are looking at the sun, and which you can't do normally, but we have some footage here you can do it with, if you are observing the sun and thinking about, okay, what is this telling me about God, you can get this opening to deeper insight. So what we have here is NASA footage. This is the real sun. filmed by NASA satellites, or maybe the Hubble. I don't know. Does the Hubble do video? I don't know. Does it have like an app for video in it? Um, so as we, it's just like 30 seconds, but looking at this, just because it's hard to know all the, like, what is God like, and that we can get some answer, something about the power and the majesty of God in looking at the sun. So here we have some imagery of that, and take a look and open your mind and see what comes. So it's, I mean, that last one looks a little bit, but it's not the most warm, fuzzy picture, but I do think it tells you a little about the scope, and the magnitude and the power, and knowing that God is love at the same time, but it can have this kind of power. It's kind of like, ooh, yeah, that's cool. Okay, so I thought that this was, when I was looking at the time as we are going through, I was like, ooh, this one's going to be short, but it turns out it's long. I'm shocked that you all stayed with me and kept watching. I really appreciate that. You guys make it fun every week. If you want to help share this program with other people, you can donate to the Swedenborg Foundation. I mean, this whole thing is run off donations. The foundation is a nonprofit, and if you make a little PayPal donation, it can be matched by a grant that we got. So just open up the description of this video, click that link, and yeah, the contribution will just go towards reaching other people who might be interested in this kind of thing. So thank you very much for your consideration, and thanks for the questions and the comments. That I always feel like I learn from those too, and it's cool to hear people wondering about the same kind of things that I wonder about. We're going to be back next week, same time. And to close, we thought about beauty today, and sort of the external and the internal, and what it all means. And that's kind of what's cool about the whole worldview Swedenborg presents, is it's a satisfying ending. Like, that makes sense, and that's just, and that's fair. That's how I felt like this whole beauty thing shit. Because here in this world, it doesn't feel fair. Some people are beautiful, some people are ugly, and some people have a harder life because people make fun of them, and some people have it easy, and that doesn't seem fair. And that yeah, it doesn't matter how nice you are, it won't change, and that we kind of unfairly pedestal people who look good and all that. But what he's talking about in the other life, where you really are what you are, and that love looks beautiful there, and to me that seems like, yeah, that makes sense. So I appreciate you taking this little journey with me, and hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.